for the second session of this webinar series on graph theory. As you all know, this is a part of student teacher enrichment program conducted by Department of Mathematics and Center for Topology and Applications of Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology. The first series was held and focused on topology. The second series, we are focusing on various aspects of graph theory. For this second session, today we have with us Dr. Indulal G. It's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Indulal. Professor Indulal is now working as professor in mathematics at St. Aloysius College, Edathua, Alappuzha, Kerala, in India. He completed his PhD from Cochin University of Science and Technology in 2008. He is a pioneer in spectral graph theory. He is an internationally well-known mathematician because of his contributions to graph energy and related areas. He has published more than 30 research papers in international journals. He is a reviewer of many journals in mathematics. He has given radio talks on several topics in mathematics. He has written popular articles in magazines and journals. Besides his interest in mathematics, he is a well-known writer and poet. He underlines the words of renowned mathematician Carl Weierstrass, who is often cited as father of modern analysis. Weierstrass once said, "It is true that a mathematician who is not somewhat of a poet will never be a perfect mathematician." On behalf of Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology, on behalf of all the participants, and on behalf of the organizers, Professor Indulal, may I welcome and invite you to deliver the talk on basics in spectral graph theory. Professor Indulal, please.
Dr. Vinod Kumar and dear participants, thank you very much for the very nice introductory remarks on me. And I extend my gratitude and thanks for the organizers, especially Dr. Vinod Kumar, for giving me an opportunity to share with you some information regarding spectral graph theory. As I assume that all participants are having some basic knowledge in graph theory. And as all of you know, graph theory evolved as a branch of mathematics in the 18th century. And the spectra of graphs comes into history in the early 40s, 1940s. And especially 1936, it began due to the work of Huckel, a chemist in the field of molecular orbital theory. And even though it started as a chemistry part, it evolved as a mathematics. It evolved as a mathematical part in 1957 due to the work of Sinkowitz and Collatz. So why I said this is to make you know that this branch of graph theory, spectral graph theory, is a very young subject when even graph theory is concerned. Graph theory is considered to be the youngest modern branch of mathematics. And this spectral graph theory is more young than graph theory. And during these 70 years, so the gravity and the significance of a branch of mathematics is reflected in the number of publications in that area. If that can be counted as a merit or a significant significant level of its importance. During these 70 years, more than 15,000 research articles have been published in various international forums, and several presentations based upon this, on one aspect or other related to spectra of graphs. So this branch, so we assume that this offers an ample area of research. That is why we select this topic for an introductory talk on graph theory, especially spectral graph theory, to an FDP program mainly aimed on students and young research faculties. So we begin with as the topic reflects. I mean, I am planning to give you a very basic in spectral graph theory, and once that basic is made concrete, I think you can build up your own reasonings and your own techniques and your own reading and your own research based upon these very basics of the spectral results and concepts in spectral graph theory. So we begin with begin with, I think you can see this. See, in our discussion, we know that the conventional representation of members of Rn are as ordered n-tuples. And here in our discussion, we denote the members of Rn as the n/1 column vectors. Say x is equal to, so this is the standard representation, x1, x2, etc., xn. These are the members of Rn. And we define the dot product of two vectors. If x and y are like this, x1, x2, etc., xn, y1, y is equal to y1, y2, etc., yn, then we define the dot product x dot y as the matrix product x transpose y. So this is sigma I from 1 to n xi yi. Also x dot x is then sigma I from 1 to n sigma xi square. And we say two vectors are orthogonal if their dot product is 0. Two vectors u and v are said to be orthogonal if u dot v equal to 0. And vectors are said to be linearly independent if the linear combination happens to be 0, if and only if every scalar in the representation is 0. And orthogonal vectors are linearly independent. So if u and v are orthogonal, then consider a linear combination alpha u plus beta v equal to 0. So we multiply scale with, you find this, we multiply with the vector v, take dot product with vector v, gives the value 0. U and v are orthogonal, so this is 0, and v dot b is sigma vi square, that is not 0 since an orthogonal vector cannot be 0, and that implies beta equal to 0, consequently alpha equal to 0. So if u and v are orthogonal, then they are linearly independent. So these are basic concepts from linear algebra. And where this linear algebra comes into graph theory, that can be present in graph theory only through some linear transformations, linear operators, or more simply a matrix. And there are several matrices associated with the graphs. And one of the famous, most researched area is adjacency matrix. And the definition of the adjacency matrix is the matrix if G is, so suppose G is a graph on vertices v1, v2, etc., vn. Then an n by n matrix capital A defined by Aij where Aij is equal to 1 if Vi and Vj are adjacent, equal to 0 if Vi and Vj are not adjacent. That is defined as the adjacency matrix. For example, this is K12. This graph is K12. And this is also K12. And this is with the vertex labeling 1, 2, 3. And this is with the vertex label 2, 1, 3. Since the definition of adjacency matrix is based upon a vertex labeling, it is a natural question. It is a natural doubt that whether the adjacency matrix changes if we change the labels of vertices. And we can see, and what we will see, what happens when we change the labels of vertices. And in fact, there is no significance in the labeling of vertices. We can label the vertices as we wish. And what happens? How this label change reflects in adjacency matrix, that we will see. So, for example, you consider a very simple graph K12, and the adjacency matrix is this, and the rows and columns are indexed by vertices V1, V2, V3, and the ijth entry is the corresponding Vi Vj relation. Here, this entry is 1, means V1 and V2 are adjacent. V1 and V2 are adjacent, and so on. And now here we changed the labels. We made an interchange of the labels 1 and 2, and we kept 3 as such. I think this 1 is not visible. Can you see this 1 in the second K12? Okay, I can't see because of the participants panel on the right side. Okay, anyway, I assume that you can see that. Now in this graph, we interchange the labels 1 and 2. Then what happens is, see, the rows 1 and 2 get interchanged, and columns 1 and 2 get interchanged. See from this first, columns 1 and 2 get interchanged. 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, and last 0, 1, 0, followed by the rows interchange. Or you can see it as first the row interchange, first row and second row get interchanged, and then column interchange. No problem. Now the first and second rows get interchanged. 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0. So we observed that an interchange of labels, interchange of 2 labels, get reflected in the adjacency matrix by the interchange of the corresponding rows and corresponding columns. And in the language of algebra, an interchange of labels is a transposition. So a transposition in the adjacency matrix is reflected by an elementary transformation, right? Interchanging of 2 rows and interchanging of 2 columns is an elementary transformation. And the matrix obtained after a sequence of elementary transformation is similar to the original matrix. So capital A and capital B are similar. So our immediate observation is, if we interchange the labels, or if we apply a transposition on the vertex labeling, that will result in a matrix similar to the adjacency matrix capital A. So if we apply interchange of labels, we get a similar matrices similar to the adjacency matrix. So suppose now we apply a whole vertex changing, whole vertex label changing, not only a transposition. We randomly change, say 1, 2, 3 is changed to 3, 1, 2. Then what happens is, this change corresponds to a permutation. Say the old labels 1, 2, 3 changes to 3, 1, 2, and this is a permutation. And by basic abstract algebra resolving, we know that a permutation is a product of transpositions, and every such transpositions, when applied to this matrix in succession, that ends in a matrix similar to capital A. So if we are interested in studying the properties of this matrix, which are invariant under similarity, then the vertex labelings are insignificant. I repeat, if we are interested, see, there is a conditional statement. If we are interested in studying the properties of this matrix, which are invariant under similarity, and fortunately, in spectral graph theory, we are concerned only with those properties which are invariant under similarity. So the vertex labeling is insignificant. In any order, one can label the vertices of the graph, and at first it may look different, the adjacency matrix got by two individual persons, but the matrices are similar, and we are studying only the properties which are invariant under similarity. So this is the effect of the changing of labels. So change the assignment of labels to the vertices is insignificant. With any labels, we can define the adjacency matrix. Okay. So this keeps similarity under vertex labeling. And one of the interesting fact is the matrix, the adjacency matrix is real because the entries are only zeros and ones. And the matrix is symmetric because Aij is 1 or 0 according as Vi is adjacent to Vj or not. So that is the same as Aj. Whenever Vi and Vj are adjacent, Vj and Vi are adjacent, Vi and Vj are not adjacent. On the other way, Vj and Vi are not adjacent. So Aij is equal to Aji. So A is real and symmetric. So this gives us an ample scope to study the matrices associated with the graph, the adjacency matrix associated with the graphs, because we have some rich results concerned with the symmetric matrices. So we can apply those results of symmetric matrices conveniently to the adjacency matrix of a graph. And in fact, there are sums to degrees. And another observation, a very interesting observation, is the ijth entry of A raised to k. So you take any power of the adjacency matrix, the ijth entry of A raised to k, there is a total number of Vi, Vj walks of length k in G. So that is a very elementary result, and you can see that this can be proved by the mathematical induction over k. When k is equal to 1, A raised to k is equal to A itself, and A is equal to Aij. And we know that Aij is 1 or 0. So suppose Vi adjacent to Vj, if Vi adjacent to Vj, then the number of Vi, Vj walk of length is 1, and that is equal to Aij. If Vi and Vj are not adjacent, then the Vi, Vj walk of length 1 is 0, and Aij equal to 0 in that case. So result is true for k is equal to 1, and we assume that the result is true for k minus 1. So A raised to the ijth entry of k minus A raised to k minus 1 is the total number of Vi, Vj walks of length k minus 1. And suppose, and now consider A raised to k. A raised to k is A raised to k minus 1 into A. So suppose A raised to k minus 1 is equal to Bij. So this is the product of the matrices Bij and Cij. And suppose the ijth entry of A raised to k is Cij. Therefore, Cij is equal to sigma h from 1 to n Bih Ahj. And the first term Bih is the total number of Vh walks of length k minus 1. And the second entry, that second term Ahj, is the total number of Vj walks of length 1. So combining these two, this entry, see, when we find the total number of Vi, Vj walks passing through Vh, this term Bih into Ahj denote the Vi, Vj walks of length k passing through Vh. And h runs from 1 to n. This gives the total number of Vi, Vj walks of length k. So a raised to k, the ijth entry of a raised to k, this result will be used in getting some nice results regarding the structural properties and eigenvalues of graphs. And the Cij is then the total number of Vi, Vj. So the ijth entry of a raised to k is the total number of Vi, Vj walks of length k. And this is the conventional definition of an eigenvalue of a matrix. Lambda is an eigenvalue of a matrix A if and only if there exists a non-zero vector V such that AV is equal to lambda V. And the eigenvalues of a matrix are the roots of the characteristic polynomial. And the eigenvalues of the adjacency matrix is known as the eigenvalues of the graph. See, in fact, there are several matrices now associated with the graphs. The initial spectral study on graphs were concentrated on adjacency matrix, and later the area of research witnessed several matrices associated with the graphs, among them the Laplacian matrix is the next oldest matrix associated with the graphs. Then signless Laplacian is a recent introduction, distance matrix, signless distance matrix, and several other matrices associated with complementary distance, reciprocal distance, cycle matrix, block matrix, and more than 96 matrices are there now in literature associated with the graphs. And as I said you in the initial wordings, that we are concentrating only on the adjacency matrix of a graph, and a similar treatment can be extended to almost all matrices associated with graphs. And the set of eigenvalues of a matrix or this graph, matrix means adjacency matrix, the set of eigenvalues of this graph forms its spectrum. And we have, since A is a real symmetric matrix, we have all eigenvalues are real. See, we have a direct proof. Suppose lambda be an eigenvalue of the adjacency matrix A with eigenvector V. So AV is equal to lambda V. And we have this A is real and symmetric, so A transpose is equal to A. It is real means its conjugate is A. Now we start with this equation, lambda V bar transpose V. Lambda V bar transpose V. So that is equal to V bar transpose lambda V. That is V bar transpose, this lambda V is AV. And this can be written as V bar transpose. This A is A bar and A is A transpose. So V. And this is equal to A bar V bar the whole transpose V. We have AV is equal to lambda V. So AV, this is AV the whole transpose. AV the whole transpose. AV the whole conjugate transpose V. And this is equal to lambda V all conjugate transpose V, and this is equal to lambda bar V bar transpose V. We have V is an eigenvector, so V not equal to 0, and V bar transpose V is then sigma Vi conjugate Vi, and this is in fact sigma I from 1 to n modulus of Vi square, and that cannot be 0. If this is 0, then every Vi should be equal to 0, and that is impossible as V not equal to 0. So this is non-zero, therefore lambda equal to lambda bar. Therefore all eigenvalues are real. And this is our first information, first knowledge regarding the eigenvalues of a graph. All eigenvalues of a graph are real. And for every eigenvalue lambda of A, f lambda is an eigenvalue of fa for any polynomial fx. Suppose lambda is an eigenvalue of A, then this has a corresponding eigenvector V such that AV is equal to lambda V. So suppose fx be any polynomial. suppose fx be any polynomial of degree n, say an x raised to n plus an minus 1 x raised to n minus 1 plus etc. plus a1 x plus a naught. Therefore, f of a is equal to an a raised to n plus an minus 1 a raised to n minus 1 plus etc. plus a1 a plus a naught I. And since AV is equal to lambda V, we have A square V is equal to AV. This is A lambda V is equal to lambda AV equal to lambda V equal to lambda square V. So repeating like this, we can see that A raised to KV is equal to lambda raised to KV for all K. Now, what is f of A V? F of A V is when V is applied. See here on the right side, we apply V. And what happens is this is an a raised to n v, an a raised to n v is lambda raised to n v plus an minus 1 lambda raised to n minus 1 v. This is lambda raised to n minus 1 plus etc. plus a1 av is lambda v plus a naught v is a naught v. And this is f lambda v. So for any polynomial fx, f lambda is an eigenvalue of fa, and we use these type results to deduce the spectrum of some well-known graphs. See, another interesting observation regarding the spectrum of the adjacency matrix of a graph is the algebraic multiplicity of an eigenvalue coincide with its geometric multiplicity. What is an algebraic multiplicity of an eigenvalue? The algebraic multiplicity of an eigenvalue is the number of times this lambda appears as a root of the characteristic polynomial. So the roots of the characteristic polynomials are the eigenvalues, and the algebraic multiplicity of an eigenvalue is the number of times this lambda physically appear as the root of the characteristic polynomial. And the geometric multiplicity, see, associated with this lambda, we have characteristic vectors. And the number of linearly independent characteristic vectors, associated with this lambda is the geometric multiplicity. Or in other words, that is the dimension of the space spanned by the characteristic vectors. Dimension of the space spanned by the characteristic vectors associated with the lambda. And we can see that for a symmetric matrix, this algebraic multiplicity is equal to geometric multiplicity. And I think I may skip the proof, but I will sketch the important steps. You see, lambda appears as an eigenvalue k times. So this, in fact, this A, the adjacency matrix and n by n real matrix can be considered as a linear operator from Rn to Rn. And lambda appears as an eigenvalue k times. So anyway, k is greater than or equal to 1. Then associated with this lambda, there is an eigenvector v, so that AV is equal to lambda v. And suppose capital V1 is the space spanned by this v. We call this as a small v1. V1 and capital V2 is the collection of all W such that W orthogonal to this V1. Now again, lambda is an eigenvalue k minus 1 times for this adjacency matrix capital A. Now we can consider this A as a linear operator from V2 to V2. This is because if W belongs to V2, AW also belongs to V2, because AW dot V is equal to AW transpose V is equal to W transpose A transpose V. A is symmetric. Here we use the fact that A is symmetric. A transpose is A. So W transpose A V is equal to lambda V, and this is lambda W transpose V. W and V are orthogonal. Say here V1. W and V1 are orthogonal, so this term is 0. So this is 0. Therefore, AW is also orthogonal to V1. AW is orthogonal to V1. Therefore, AW belongs to V2. Now, this A has an eigenvector V2 corresponding to lambda in V2. Now, in the next step, you consider capital V1 as the space spanned by these two eigenvectors V1 and V2 corresponding to lambda. And capital V2 is the collection of all W orthogonal to V1 and V2. See, in this way, we can extract all the linearly independent eigenvectors. See, the construction suggests that V2 is taken from a space orthogonal to V1. So V1 and V2 are linearly independent. Now, there is an eigenvector for A corresponding to lambda in V2 as in the previous argument. Then in the next step, we take V1 is equal to V1, V2, V3, and this process continues. So when the multiplicity of lambda as an eigenvalue ceases, the construction of these V1, V2, etc., V3, etc., corresponding to this lambda also ceases. So corresponding to the algebraic multiplicity k of lambda, we get k linearly independent eigenvectors V1, V2, etc., Vk corresponding to lambda. And this process continues. So suppose G has this A, suppose order of G is equal to n, and A has T distinct eigenvectors lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda T with the multiplicities M1, M2, etc., MT. So M1 plus M2 plus etc. plus MT is equal to n. So in the method as we described here, corresponding to this lambda 1, the algebraic multiplicity is M1 and the geometric multiplicity is also M1. So we can produce M1 linearly independent eigenvectors corresponding to lambda 1. So once the occurrence of lambda 1 stops, now you go to the occurrence, the multiplicity of lambda 2 and repeat the same argument. We get M2 linearly independent eigenvectors corresponding to lambda 2, etc. At last, we get MT linearly independent eigenvectors corresponding to the eigenvalue lambda k, where this M1 plus M2 plus etc. plus MT is equal to n. And in the n-dimensional space Rn, then these M1 plus M2 plus etc. plus MT linearly independent eigenvectors forms a basis. So a nice deduction of this statement is that if G is a graph with adjacency matrix capital A, then Rn has a basis consisting entirely of the eigenvectors of capital A belonging to different eigenvalues lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda k. And since it has a basis consisting of eigenvectors, the Gram-Smith orthonormalization process. So the basis we have constructed now is an orthogonal basis, because V2 is taken from the space orthogonal to V1, V3 is taken from the space orthogonal to V1 and V2, and in this way the construction goes. So the basis constructed is an orthogonal basis. So the result is more strong that Rn has a basis. Rn has an orthogonal basis consisting of eigenvectors of capital A. And the Gram-Smith orthonormalization process now applied on this basis will give an orthonormal basis consisting of eigenvectors of capital A corresponding to the different eigenvalues lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda k. And this is also useful in several occasions when we deal with the spectrum of graphs. So this is how every symmetric matrix is diagonalizable. See, that is an elementary concept from linear algebra, that we say a matrix capital A is diagonalizable if there exists a basis for Rn in which there exists a diagonal matrix similar to capital A. And that is in fact true. In one particular basis of Rn, the matrix of A is A itself. One particular basis, the matrix of A is A itself. And now we have just observed that Rn has a basis consisting of eigen vectors. So suppose lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda n are n eigenvectors of capital A with n eigenvectors v1, v2, etc., vn. Then in this basis, the matrix of A is given by A v1 is equal to lambda 1 v1, that is lambda 1 v1 plus 0 v2 plus etc. plus 0 vn, and A v2 is equal to 0, that is lambda 2 v2, that is 0 v1 plus lambda 2 v2 plus etc. plus 0 vn, etc. A vn is equal to lambda n vn. Lambda n vn is 0 v1 plus etc. plus lambda n vn. So that in this basis, the matrix of A in this basis v1, v2, etc., vn is a diagonal matrix. The first row is lambda 1, 0, 0, etc. Second row is 0, lambda 2, etc. The final row is, the last nth row is 0, etc., lambda n. And since this is the matrix of A in another different basis of Rn, this A and this D are similar. And so every symmetric matrix is diagonalizable. So the adjacency matrix is diagonalizable. So Rn has an orthonormal basis. See, whenever we need that, we can use that. Otherwise, we use an orthogonal basis. And anyway, there is a basis consisting of eigenvectors of capital A, in which the matrix of A is diagonal and A and D are diagonal. A and D are similar. And we know that similar matrices share some properties. And we use that to obtain, say, another fact is a minimal polynomial is a product of linear factors. That also we use. So this is because, so for a graph G, so suppose lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda k are k distinct eigenvalues with capital V1, the collection of linearly independent eigenvectors corresponding to lambda 1, V2, etc., Vk, linearly independent eigenvectors corresponding to. Now, you consider this polynomial fx is equal to x minus lambda 1 into x minus lambda 2 into etc. x minus lambda k. See, f of a. So the minimal polynomial means that is the least degree polynomial satisfied by the adjacency matrix capital A, which is equal to 0. So f of a, we can see that f of a vanishes because f of a brings every basis vector to 0. We mean by minimal polynomial, polynomial f is said to be minimal polynomial if f of x is equal to 0 for all x belongs to the concerned vector space. Here the space is Rn. And we can see that this polynomial brings every element of the basis Rn to 0. This is because, see, f of a is equal to, so we can see that f of a equal to 0. F of a is equal to a minus lambda 1 into a minus lambda 2 into etc. a minus lambda k. In fact, lambda 1i, lambda 2i, etc., lambda ki. And since A is symmetric, we can commute these factors in any way as we wish. Now, this term will vanish, will make every element in the basis corresponding to the eigenvectors of lambda k to 0. If V is an eigenvector corresponding to lambda k, then a minus lambda ki of V equal to 0. because AV is equal to lambda K. So each such term will bring every element of the part of the corresponding basis. See, we know that Rn has a basis consisting of eigenvectors, and there are eigenvectors corresponding to lambda K, and the term A minus lambda K brings every element of that part of basis to 0. A minus lambda 1 make that part of the basis corresponding to the eigenvectors of lambda 1 to 0, and so on. So this polynomial as a whole vanishes every element of the basis of Rn consisting of the eigenvectors of the adjacency matrix of G to 0. So this polynomial f of A is 0. And no other polynomial can bring every element of Rn to 0. If you drop a factor from this, then the remaining part cannot make the part of the basis of Rn corresponding to the eigenvectors of lambda K to 0. So this is in fact the minimal polynomial, and the minimal polynomial is a product of linear factors. Okay. Now, see, we discuss. Our discussions are based on connected graphs only. This is because, so suppose a graph G is disconnected with two components. Then it is elementary to see that the adjacency matrix of G. See, suppose the adjacency matrix of this part is B, and the adjacency matrix of this part is C, and this is B0, 0, C. So that the eigenvalues of A of G are the eigenvalues of B together with the eigenvalues of C. So a discussion of the eigenvalues of G can be pertained to the discussion on eigenvalues of the connected part B or connected part C. And the characteristic polynomial is a product of characteristic polynomial of the connected parts. So we restrict our discussion on connected graphs. If we have results on connected graphs, then we can extend that to a disconnected graph also, because the spectrum of G is the union of the spectrum of the connected components B and C. So we discuss only, our discussion is based only on connected graphs. Now, this is an interesting observation. This is actually, this is a relation connecting the structural property and eigenvalues of graphs. We know that the adjacency matrix A is similar to the diagonal matrix D, whose diagonal entries are lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda K, or this lambda n. If repetitions are also included in this representation, then the eigenvalues are lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda n. In fact, lambda 1 may be equal to lambda 2, may be equal to lambda 3, and so on. So the repeated eigenvalues are also denoted as differently lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda n. The n eigenvalues are the diagonal entries of D. And we know that this is what I mentioned in the beginning when we study adjacency matrix and the insignificance of labeling. We are interested only in those properties which are invariant under similarities. And one of the fact which is invariant under similarity is the trace of a matrix. Two similar matrices have the same trace. Trace is the sum of the diagonal entries. And another fact which is invariant under similarity is the characteristic polynomial. Similar matrices have the same characteristic polynomial. So that is why we say the labeling of vertices is insignificant when we study the spectral part of graph theory. Okay, anyway, now A is the adjacency matrix, and we know that the ith entry of A are zeros because Vi not adjacent to Vi. So adjacency of Vi and Vi is reflected in the diagonal entries of A, and that is 0. And on the other hand, the diagonal entries of D are lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda n, and these two are similar. So sum of the eigenvalues, so the trace of D is equal to trace of A, and trace of D is sum of lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda n, that is sum of the eigenvalues, and trace of A is 0. So sum of the eigenvalues is 0. And the next is sum of the squares of eigenvalues is twice the number of edges. See, we observe that if A is similar to D, then A square is similar to D square. So this is because since A is similar to D, we know that there is a matrix X such that K is equal to X D X inverse. So squaring A square is equal to X D X inverse into X D X inverse. We get X D X inverse into X D X inverse. We get this is X D square X inverse. So A square is similar to D square and so on. That's an elementary matrix result. And since A is similar to D, A square is similar to D square. And since D is the diagonal matrix with the diagonal entries lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda n, the diagonal entries of D square are lambda 1 square, lambda 2 square, etc., lambda n square. And on the other hand, the diagonal entries of A square, ith entry. In a previous result, we have seen that the ith entry of A square is the total number of vi walks of length 2. vi walks of length 2. And how a vi walk of length 2 arise? vi walk of length 2 arise only through an edge incident with vi. If there is an edge incident with vi, we get a vi walk like this. So we start from vi, go to some other vertex to which this edge is incident with, then coming back through that edge to reach vi. So how many edges are incident with vi? That much number of vi walks of length 2 are there. So the ith entry is the degree of vi. So this is degree of v1, degree of v2, etc., degree of vn. That is the ijth entry of A square, ith entry of A square. And the trace of A square is equal to trace of D square. Trace of D square is sum of the squares. So sigma lambda I square is equal to trace of A square. Trace of A square is sum of the degrees of vertices. And the first theorem in graph theory says that is the twice the number of edges. So sigma lambda I square is equal to 2m. And we can further extend this result. And these are in fact called the spectral moments of the graph. Sum of the powers of the eigenvalues. This is the sum of the first powers of eigenvalues, and this is the sum of the second powers of eigenvalues. And similarly, sum of the third powers of eigenvalues is T, where T is the number of triangles. This is the trace of D cube. A is similar to D, so A square is similar to D. A cube is similar to D cube, and trace of D cube is sigma lambda I cube. And on the other hand, trace of, when we try to find the trace of A cube, the ith entry of A cube is the total number of vi walks of length 3. And how a vi walk of length 3 arise? So we can see that a vi walk of length 3 can occur only with the help of a triangle. Vi, vj, vk. Then there are two vi walks of length 3, vi, vj, vk, and vi, vk, vj. So every triangle in which this vi lies gives rise to two vi walks of length 3. But at the same time, this triangle is counted twice when we consider the jth entry of A cube and also in the kth entry of A cube. So altogether this triangle will be counted 6 times. So trace of A cube is equal to 60. Actually, see, this is the place where the structural property and the spectral property of graphs comes hand in hand. This is a structural property. The number of triangles number of edges, all these are structural properties of a graph. And the left hand side is purely spectral aspect of graph. So this is an ample area of research. How the spectral moment and the structural properties of graphs are get interconnected. So naturally we may ask, what is sigma lambda I raised to 4? And fortunately or unfortunately, I say unfortunately or fortunately, no concrete or compact result for this sigma lambda I raised to 4 is available. If the graph has some particular structures, or if C4 structure is not there, something like that, then there are some results regarding sigma lambda I raised to 4. So from here onwards, the relation of the spectral moments with structural property of structural relation of graphs, or structural picture of graphs seems to be difficult. That is why I said it is unfortunate, because we have no results. But I say it is fortunate for researchers for finding these spectral moments in terms of the structural parameters of graphs. So you ask which parameters or which structure can be avoided in finding a nice relation. So if there is any relation connecting these type of spectral moments with particular classes of graphs, so for example bipartite graphs, complete graphs, cycles, so and so. So this is a research area. Now, see, another structural relation with the eigenvalues of graph is, suppose G be a connected graph with a diameter D, then G has at least D plus 1 distinct eigenvalues. This is a structural relation. See, the diameter is a structural parameter of a graph. And the structural parameter of the graph address the number of distinct eigenvalues of a graph. If G is a graph of diameter D, then G has at least D plus 1 distinct eigenvalues. Suppose the number of distinct eigenvalues is equal to K, and we need to show that K is greater than or equal to D plus 1. We assume that K is less than or equal to D. Okay. Now, since the number of distinct eigenvalues is K, the minimal polynomial of G is a product of K linear factors. Therefore, the minimal polynomial fx is a polynomial of degree K. Therefore, f of A is a polynomial in A, f of A equal to 0, which is a polynomial in K. So it looks like something like A and A raised to K plus etc. plus something like A1 A plus A naught equal to 0. So this means this A raised to K can be expressed in terms of A raised to K can be expressed in terms of A raised to K minus 1 etc. A and I. Okay. Now it is given that the graph is of diameter D. So remember that A raised to K can be expressed in terms of I, K, A square, etc. A raised to K minus 1. Now it is given that the graph is of diameter D. So there exist two vertices U and V such that distance between U and V is equal to D. And the distance between U and V is the length of the shortest path joining U and V. There is a length of the shortest path joining U and V is D, means there are no walks of length less than D connecting U and V. There are no walks of length less than D connecting U and V. So the number of UV walks of length K less than D equal to 0. So all UV thenry of a raised to k minus 1, a raised to k minus 2, etc. a, I are all zeros. Now, a raised to k can be expressed as a linear combination of, or can be expressed in terms of these means a raised to k plus 1, a raised to k plus 2, etc. All can be expressed in as a linear combination of IA, etc. a raised to k minus 1. A raised to k can be expressed as a linear combination of these. So a raised to k plus 1, a raised to k is a linear combination of this. So a raised to k plus 1 consequently, after some algebraic manipulation, can be expressed as a linear combination of IA, a square, etc. a raised to k minus 1. And so means any higher power of a for any a raised to t greater than or equal to k can be expressed as a linear combination of y, a square, etc. a raised to k minus 1. So in particular, a raised to d can be expressed as a linear combination of I, a square, etc. a raised to k minus 1, in which the UVth entry of a raised to d is non-zero. Because the UVth entry of a raised to d is the total number of Vi, Vj walks of length d, and there is at least one path joining u and v of length d. So this UVth entry of a raised to d is non-zero. But the UVth entry of all these terms are zeros. So in the linear combination also, the UVth entry is 0, and that is a contradiction. So the total number of distinct eigenvalues, this is false. K less than or equal to d is false. So k is greater than or equal to d plus 1. Okay. So this is another problem for research. See, we have, if G is a graph of diameter d, then G has at least d plus 1 distinct eigenvalues. So given a graph of diameter d, which graph has exactly d plus 1 eigenvalues? Which graphs has exactly d plus 1 distinct eigenvalues is a research problem. Some classes of graphs with some particular values of d are there. If d is equal to 1, then complete graphs are those graphs with exactly 2 distinct eigenvalues. And if d is equal to 2, then complete bipartite graphs, strongly regular graphs, are some classes of graphs having 3 distinct eigenvalues. And the problem is challenging if d is greater than or equal to 2, greater than or equal to 3. When even in the case of d is equal to 2, an exhaustive listing of graphs with exactly 3 distinct eigenvalues is not done. So you can attempt one part of this problem, characterizing some graphs with exactly d plus 1 distinct eigenvalues, or giving families of graphs having d plus 1 distinct eigenvalues when the graph is of diameter d. Another one is a more challenging problem, characterizing all graphs with exactly d plus 1 distinct eigenvalues. And we can have some very simple matrices and their spectrum using very simple techniques. See, we call a matrix as a circulant matrix if the matrix can be obtained from its first row itself. If the first row is a1, a2, a3, etc., an, then all the successive rows are obtained by just a pushing of the first row. So we push the first row so that a1 goes to the end, an starts with an, a1, a2, a3, etc., an minus 1, and so on recursively. If all other rows can be obtained from the first row with a single jump, then we can see that the spectrum of this can be easily calculated. So suppose omega is an nth root of unity. Omega is an nth root of unity, and you consider V is equal to, the V is equal to 1 omega, omega square, etc., omega raised to n minus 1. Then for each nth root of unity, we can see that the family of these vectors are linearly independent. So we get n linearly independent vectors. And we can see that when we find the product of this, the first row is, the first element is a1 plus a2 omega. So this is a1 plus a2 omega plus etc. plus an omega raised to n minus 1. The second is an plus a1 omega plus a2 omega square plus etc. plus an minus 1 omega raised to n minus 1, etc. The last is a2 plus a3 omega plus etc. plus a1 omega raised to n minus 1. And we can see that this is nothing other than lambda, lambda omega square, etc., lambda omega raised to n minus 1. If you call the first entry, that is the lambda is equal to, if you call this a1 plus a2 omega plus etc. plus an omega raised to n minus 1 as lambda, we can see that the first term is lambda. Lambda omega is a1 omega, a2 omega square, etc. an omega raised to n minus 1 into omega, an omega raised to n. Omega raised to n is 1, so that is an, and so on. And we can see that this is lambda v. So if A is a circulant matrix, then this V serves as an eigenvector with eigenvalue lambda. So the eigenvalues of the circulant matrix R, or the spectrum of this circulant matrix A, is A1 plus A2 omega plus A3 omega square plus etc. plus an omega raised to n minus 1, where omega is an nth root of unity. Collection of all elements of this form for each nth root of unity gives rise the spectrum of the circulant matrix. And in fact, in graph theory, there are several circulant matrices we see. One is Cn. Cn is a circulant matrix. The adjacency matrix of Cn is a circulant matrix. The cycle, see, V1 is adjacent to V2 and Vn. So in the first row, the entries are 0, V1, V2, etc., Vn. V1, V2 is 1, and V1, Vn minus V1, Vn is 1. Corresponding to the first row. So, and all other rows can be obtained by a push of this or a jump of this, because the graph itself is symmetric with respect to the labelings of V1, V2, etc., Vn. So the spectrum of Cn, I'm not going into the detailed writing of this spectrum. The spectrum of Cn can be obtained as in the previous formula, that is omega plus omega raised to n minus 1. Omega plus omega raised to n minus 1, where omega raised to n is an nth root of unity, and taking omega is equal to cos 2 pi r by n plus I sin 2 pi r by n, r equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, etc., n minus 1. We can generate all eigenvalues of the spectrum of Cn, and on a simplification, we get this as 2 cos 2 pi r by n, r equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, etc., n minus 1. See, why we develop these kind of techniques? Why we develop these kind of techniques to obtain the spectrum of a graph? See, this is because, see, suppose A is an n by n matrix. Sorry, G is an n vertex graph. Then A is an n by n matrix. So the characteristic polynomial characteristic polynomial is determinant a minus lambda I equal to 0. Determinant a minus lambda I equal to 0. And the expansion of an n by n, see, this is an n by n determinant. To get the characteristic polynomial, we have to expand this n by n determinant. And the expansion of an n by n determinant is a polynomially complex problem. It's a difficult procedure to expand an n by n determinant. And suppose if we somehow expand this n by n determinant, then we results in an nth degree equation. And solving an nth degree equation is also not easy. It is a very tedious procedure. So that direct approach may result in the spectrum of a graph. So we need to develop such simple techniques to obtain the spectrum of at least some classes of graphs. Now Kn, you consider Kn. What is the specialty of Kn? In Kn, every two vertices are adjacent. So the first row corresponding to, we see the adjacency matrix is v1 to v1 is 0, and for all other vertices v1 is adjacent, and this is the first row of Kn. And consequently, other rows can be obtained by a single push, because here also the labeling of vertices is very insignificant when v1, v2, etc., vn are concerned, because any two vertices are adjacent. And you consider when v2 is considered, v2 to v1 is 1, v2 to 0, 1, 1, 1, etc., 1, and this is obtained by a single push of this. So this is a circulant matrix. And the spectrum of Kn is then consisting of 0 plus omega square plus etc. plus omega raised to n minus 1. Omega is an nth root of unity. See, there are two nth root of unities. One is 1 itself, and the other one is different from 1. One of the nth root of unity is 1 itself, and the other one is different from 1. And this is then equal to, if omega is 1 itself, then this is 1 plus 1 plus etc. plus 1 n minus 1 times. So that eigenvalue is n minus 1. And omega equal to 1 appear as the nth root of unity only once. So this is with multiplicity 1. And if omega is different from 1, then we know that then we have this equation 1 plus omega square plus etc. plus omega raised to n minus 1. That is a sum to n terms of a geometry progression with common ratio omega, and when simplified we get that as 0. So this is minus 1. So minus 1, and that occur n minus 1 times. So this is the spectrum of Kn. And we obtained this fact because the spectrum of Kn is circulant. Now the identity matrix, and for the identity matrix, the first row is 1, 0, 0, 0, etc. So the spectrum consists only of 1 n times. And for J is the all one matrix, 1, 1, 1, etc. 1. So the eigenvalues are 1 plus omega square plus etc. plus omega raised to n minus 1. When omega is equal to 1, one of the eigenvalues is 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus etc. 1, that is n 1 times, and all other eigenvalues are zeros. So these are the eigenvalues of J. The non-zero eigenvalue of J is n, and all other eigenvalues are zeros. And this is another structural relation, a structural property of a graph related to its spectrum. So that is one aspect, one area of research. What are the structural properties which can be deduced or can be obtained from the spectrum of a graph? So there is a well-known characterization of a graph in terms of cycles. A graph G is bipartite if and only if it has no odd cycles. And this is one characterization of a graph, a bipartite graph, in terms of the spectrum. See, we say the spectrum is symmetric with about 0 if whenever lambda is an eigenvalue, minus lambda is also an eigenvalue. If whenever lambda is an eigenvalue, minus lambda is also an eigenvalue, we say the spectrum is symmetric about 0. So we can show that G is bipartite if and only if its spectrum is symmetric about 0, and it is interesting to see the proof. Just a few lines. So suppose G is bipartite. G is bipartite means the vertex set of G can be partitioned into two sets so that the edges are between these two vertices only. So the vertex set can be partitioned into V1 and V2 such that any edge of G is an edge joining a vertex of V1 and a vertex of V2, and in between V1 there are no edges, in between V2 there are no edges. So the adjacency matrix of G can be written as, if G is a bipartite graph, G can be written as, see that the adjacency matrix is indexed by the vertex set. In between V1 there are no edges, so this part is 0, and in between V1 and V2 there are edges, and suppose that part, the adjacency is given by B. If V1 and V2 adjacency is represented by B, then V2 V1 adjacency is represented by its transpose B transpose, and in between V2 there are no edges, so this is the adjacency matrix. Now we can show that if lambda is an eigenvalue, minus lambda is also an eigenvalue. So suppose lambda is an eigenvalue. Since lambda is an eigenvalue, there is an eigenvector W not equal to 0 such that AW is equal to lambda W. And since A is a block matrix, this W can be blocked into two parts, U and V, so that AW is equal to lambda W. So that means A is 0, B transpose V 0, UV equal to lambda UV. So this implies 0 into U plus B into V, VV is equal to lambda U, and B transpose U is equal to lambda V. Now we know that W is non-zero, being an eigenvector. Therefore, at least one of these, U or V, is non-zero. Suppose U not equal to 0. Now consider W dash is equal to minus UV. Clearly, these two vectors are linearly independent. W and W dash are linearly independent. And AW dash is equal to 0 V transpose 0 minus U V is equal to 0 BV minus B transpose U, and this is equal to, see, BV is equal to lambda U, and B transpose U is lambda V, so this is minus lambda V. So minus lambda is taken outside, so this is minus U V. This means minus lambda W dash. So we obtained A W dash is equal to minus lambda W dash. Therefore, minus lambda is also an eigenvalue of G. So the spectrum is symmetric about 0. So if the graph is bipartite, the spectrum is symmetric about 0. And on the other way, suppose the spectrum is symmetric about 0. So for every lambda belongs to the spectrum of G, minus lambda also belongs to spectrum of G. And to show that G is bipartite, it's sufficient to show that there are no odd cycles. And odd cycle is a walk of odd length. So it is sufficient to show that it has no walks of odd length. And sigma lambda I raised to k, that is a total number of, sigma lambda I raised to k is the trace of a raised to k for k odd. For k odd, sigma lambda a raised to k is trace of a raised to k, and trace of a raised to k is sum of the ith entries of this. That is the total number of vi. See, this is the total number of vi walks of length k odd. Total number of vi walks of length k odd, I from 1 to n. And we can see that in this sum, corresponding to every positive lambda, there is a negative lambda term. So the positive lambda raised to k term will get cancelled with the negative counterpart. So this sum is 0. Therefore, this is 0. The total number of vi walks of length k is odd means the total number of vi walks of length odd is 0, means there are no odd cycles, because an odd cycle is a vi walk of length odd. So the graph has no odd cycles, therefore the graph is bipartite. So this is one of the interesting problem regarding the structural property and the the structural property and the spectral aspect of graph. And this result, the Perrin-Frobenius theorem for k-regular graph. So this is actually a particular case of the Perrin-Frobenius theorem for general graphs. Now a question arises: at least can we find the spectrum of a regular graph? And there are some interesting facts regarding the spectrum of a k-regular graph. So suppose G is a connected k-regular graph with at least 2 vertices. We can see that the all-one vector is an eigenvector corresponding to k. So this is because G is a connected k-regular graph. K-regular means each vertex v1 is adjacent with k vertices. Each vertex v1 is adjacent with k vertices. Therefore, in the row corresponding to v1, there will be k ones. In the row corresponding to v2, there will be k ones in somewhere else, etc. In every row, there will be k ones and elsewhere zeros, because vi's are not adjacent with any other vertices. So if we take the all one column vector, then this v is a non-zero vector, and the product is, see, there are k ones, then multiplied with these ones we get k. The second row, k ones multiplied with these ones, we again get k, etc. k. So this is k j n by 1. So j, all whose coordinates are 1, is an eigenvector corresponding to k. And if G is a connected k-regular graph, we can see that this k is simple. See, how can we show that k is simple? See, by simple we means the number of occurrence of k as an eigenvalue is 1. That is, the algebraic multiplicity is equal to 1. See, for that it is sufficient to show that the geometric multiplicity of k is equal to 1. That means the number of linearly independent eigenvectors associated with k is 1. The number of, to show that the k is simple, it's sufficient to show that algebraic multiplicity of k is the same as the geometric multiplicity. We know that the algebraic multiplicity of k is the same as geometric multiplicity. So to show that k is simple, it's sufficient to show that the geometric multiplicity of k is 1, and geometric multiplicity of k is the dimension of the space spanned by these eigenvectors corresponding to k. That is the number of linearly independent eigenvectors corresponding to k. And we show that any other eigenvector is a scalar multiple of these 1, 1, 1, 1, etc. Any eigenvector corresponding to k is a scalar multiple of this. How? So k is a simple, that we will prove next. Suppose x is equal to, suppose x is equal to x1, x2, etc., xk, xn, x1, x2, etc., xn be an eigenvector corresponding to k of G. See, without loss of generality, we can assume that this x has a positive entry, because if all entries of this x are negative, we take minus x instead of x. And xi be the largest positive entry. Then from the fact ax is equal to kx and expanding along the ith row, we know that in the ith row there are k ones. So the vertex is adjacent with k other vertices, so that the entries will be ai1, ai2, etc., aik. These are the non-zero entries in the ith row, ai1, ai2, etc., aik. So that xi1 plus xi2, so the corresponding entries in the column vector is ai1, xi1, that means ai1 is 1, so xi1 plus xi2 plus etc. plus xik is equal to ax is equal to kx, so this is kxi. Now all these numbers are less than or equal to xi, because xi is with the largest positive entry. So if any of these is less than xi, then to compensate this sum to kxi, we have the other one will be greater than xi, that is impossible. So none of them cannot be less than xi, and none of them cannot be greater than xi, because xi is the largest positive entry. Therefore, this in turn implies xi1 equal to xi2 equal to etc. equal to xik equal to xi. So we get these are all largest entries in these xi's. Now we repeat this argument with the vertex corresponding to this entry xi1. So suppose that is vj. Then you take vj and repeat the same argument. Then vj is adjacent with some other k vertices. Then the corresponding entries are also equal to xi1, which is equal to xi. And in turn, we get the vector x as all entries equal to xi, 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 etc., xi. So this is an xi multiple of j n by 1. And so k is simple. All other eigenvectors corresponding to k is a multiple of j, and hence the dimension of eigenspace of k is 1. And by a similar treatment, we can show that for any other eigenvalue minus k less than or equal to lambda less than or equal to k. So this actually gives an estimate of the spectrum of G. If G is a K-regular graph, then the spectrum lies in the closed interval minus kk. This k is attainable also. If G is a K-regular graph, then the spectrum of G is one of the eigenvalues of G is k, and all other eigenvalues lies in the interval minus kk. So if G is a K-regular graph, you need not look beyond this closed interval minus kk for the spectrum of G. So this is another problem on research. So can you characterize a graph G whose spectrum lies in closed interval AB, or whose spectrum lies in 0, 1? Or which structural properties of the graph offers if the spectrum lies in 0, 1, or the spectrum lies in closed interval AB? And there are several papers regarding this, where this A and B are some particular numbers. So for example, in between the golden ratio, 1 minus root 5 by 2, 1 plus root 5 by 2, which graphs have the spectrum lies between these? And which graph have spectrum lies between two consecutive irrational numbers, root 2 and root 3, like that. So this is also an area of research. This offers a plenty of research, and the same question can be then asked See, this is the case of a k-regular graph. The same question all these questions can be asked for a non-regular graph also. Is there any peculiarity or specialities in case of non-regular graphs? Almost all research have been done in case of regular graphs. So a similar treatment, similar addressing of these problems are there in non-regular graph class also. See, I think I will finish by next slide. And this is also a very important, interesting, most usable result in graph theory in case of k-regular graphs. G is a k-regular connected graph on n vertices if and only if J, the all one matrix of order n, is in the adjacency algebra of G. See, if we define what is an adjacency algebra of a graph G. See, for a graph G with an adjacency matrix capital A, the adjacency matrix is the collection of all matrices of the form Fa, where Fx is any polynomial with real entries. For a graph G with an adjacency matrix capital A, the adjacency algebra consists of all matrices of the form Fa, where Fx is a polynomial with real entries. And Hoffman polynomial theorem guarantees that if G is a k-regular connected graph on n vertices, then J is in the adjacency algebra of G. Means, so for some polynomial Fx, Fa is equal to J. J is in the adjacency algebra means one of Fs is equal to J. Means there is a polynomial Fx. Okay, as in theorem notation is Px, such that Pa is equal to J. And this we see later. The proof is simple. Assume first that J is in the adjacency algebra of G. Therefore, J is equal to f of A for some polynomial. We can show that is regular first. See, how can we show that the graph is regular? If every row sums to a constant, the first row sums to k, second row sums to k, etc. All rows sums to k. That means there are k ones in each rows, means each vertex is adjacent with the k other vertices, so the graph is k-regular. Now we can see that Aj is equal to AFA. And AFA, A is a symmetric matrix, so FA is a polynomial in A, and so this A and FA are commuting. A and FA commutes, so this is FA A, this is JA. So A, J is the all one matrix. That is equal to J A. So this means the first row sum. First row is multiplied by this 1, 1, 1, 1, etc. First row sum is equal to first column sum of A. First row sum of A is the first column sum of A. Suppose the column sum of A is C. So the first row sum, I am writing here, first row sum R1 is equal to C. Now the second row sum is the same as the first column sum. That is again C. So etc. Rn equal to C. So all row sums to a constant. Therefore, the graph is regular. This constant is the regularity of G. And also the graph is connected. See how we can show that the graph is connected. See, suppose the graph is disconnected. That means it has two components, and you take U and V from two different components. And there are no UV walks of length K. No UV walks of any length. There are no walks connecting U and V. Therefore, the UV entry of A raised to K equal to 0 for all K. Therefore, the UV entry of any polynomial in A is also 0. You take any polynomial in A, those polynomials in A contains powers of A, and in those powers the UV entry equal to 0. So, in the polynomial Fa, the UV entry is 0. But Fa is equal to J, it is given. Means the UV entry of J is also happens to be 0, and that is a contradiction. Therefore, G is connected. So, if J is in the adjacency algebra of G, the graph is regular and connected. And on the other way, we assume that G is connected and regular. Suppose G is connected and regular. Suppose G is K regular. Therefore, K is an eigenvalue that we proved. The first part of the Perrin-Frobenius theorem, we proved that K is an eigenvalue and K is simple because G is connected. And let lambda 2, lambda 3, etc., lambda t be the remaining eigenvalues, distinct eigenvalues. So lambda 1, lambda 2, etc., lambda t be the distinct eigenvalues of G with lambda 1 is equal to K. When the minimal polynomial f of A is identically equal to x minus K into x minus lambda 2 into etc. x minus lambda t. F of A, so this is f of x, not f of A. This is f of x. So this is x minus K into, we call this as g of x. This polynomial as g of x. Therefore, f of A is equal to, we replace x by A minus Ki gx, Ga. But that is equal to 0. Fa is identically equal to 0. So this implies AGA is equal to KGA. AGA is equal to KGA means each column of GA is an eigenvector of A corresponding to K. From the matrix equation AGA is equal to KGA, we have every column of this GA. This is A, this is GA, that is KGA. So this first column, when A is multiplied with this first column, we get K into this first column of GA. So each column of GA is an eigenvector of capital A corresponding to K. And we know that any eigenvector corresponding to K is a scalar multiple of the all one vector. Therefore, each column of GA, the first column of GA is Jn by 1, C1 Jn by 1. Second column is another scalar multiple of this, etc. So GA will look like C1, 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 etc., C1, C2, C2, etc., C2, etc., Cn, Cn, etc., Cn. This is GA. But we know that A is symmetric, so GA is symmetric. So the first column, first row is identical with the first column. That implies C2 equal to C1, C3 equal to C1, etc., Cn equal to C1. Therefore, C1 equal to C2 equal to etc. equal to Cn. So that is equal to C. Therefore, G of A is equal to Cj. Therefore, G of A is equal to Cj. Therefore, 1 by C of Ga is equal to J. So we proved that there is a polynomial Gx there is a polynomial fx is equal to 1 by c gx, such that f of a is equal to j, and this polynomial is known as the Hoffman polynomial. And this Hoffman polynomial satisfies these two additional conditions: f of k is equal to n and f lambda equal to 0 for any other eigenvalue lambda not equal to k. And that can be easily obtained by taking gx as x minus lambda 2 into x minus lambda 3, etc. And you considering a non-zero eigenvalue of this. The non-zero eigenvalue, see, corresponding to every eigenvalue lambda of a, g lambda is an eigenvalue of g of a. So we can see that the non-zero eigenvalue of GA is then obtained as k minus lambda 2 into k minus lambda 3 into etc. k minus lambda k, lambda t. That is the non-zero eigenvalue of Cj. Previously we obtained the non-zero eigenvalue of j as n, so this is nc. So remember that g of x is equal to x minus lambda 2 into etc. x minus lambda t, and corresponding to every eigenvalue lambda of a, g lambda is an eigenvalue of g of a. And one eigenvalue of a is k. So this is k minus lambda 2 into etc. k minus lambda t is one eigenvalue of g of a, which is non-zero. And all other eigenvalues of GAs are zeros, because lambda 2 is an eigenvalue of a. So the corresponding eigenvalue of g of a is g lambda, that is lambda 2 minus lambda 2. So this term is 0, and all other eigenvalues are zeros. So the only non-zero eigenvalue of g of a is this, and that is equal to nc. Therefore, c is equal to k minus lambda 2 into k minus lambda 3 into etc. k minus lambda t. Therefore, our fx, the Hoffman polynomial fx, is given by 1 by c. 1 by c is, we have c is equal to x r k minus lambda 2 etc. k minus lambda t by n. So fx is equal to 1 by c, that is n by k minus lambda 2 etc. k minus lambda t upon x minus lambda 2, x minus lambda 3, etc. x minus lambda t. This polynomial, this is the Hoffman polynomial. And interestingly, this polynomial satisfies these two conditions: f of a equal to j, that we already proved, and f of k, when x is replaced by k, the numerator and denominator, k minus lambda 2, k minus lambda 3, etc. k minus lambda k cancels with this, and remaining is 1. And for any other eigenvalue lambda I, the numerator vanishes, so this is 0. So this Hoffman polynomial satisfies this condition. And in finding the spectrum of several classes of graphs, j appear as a term in its expansion. So in those cases, this j can be replaced by a polynomial in A, and this result can be used for every eigenvalue lambda of g. P lambda is an eigenvalue of P of A. That result can be used to break down this j in the characteristic polynomial of certain graphs. And one of those graphs, one of such classes of graph is the complement of a regular graph. I'm stopping. Just 2 minutes. So the adjacency matrix of the complement of a regular graph is j minus I minus a. Since we have no result connecting the spectrum of the difference of matrices, we stuck here. But since G is regular, this J can be then replaced by the Hoffman polynomial Fx, Fa minus I minus A. Then the characteristic polynomial of, or the adjacency matrix of this happens to be a polynomial in A, and the eigenvalues of this, that is we are searching. the eigenvalues of this can be obtained from the eigenvalues of A, because this is another polynomial in A, HA, then corresponding to every eigenvalue lambda of G that we know, we can find the eigenvalues of H lambda. We can find the eigenvalues of HA. So the spectrum of the regular graph can be obtained. For example, for corresponding to the eigenvalue, suppose the graph is K regular, K regular. So the corresponding to the eigenvalue K, we know that f of K equal to N. So one of the eigenvalues is N minus 1 minus K. And for any other eigenvalue, that f part is 0, as Huffman polynomial guarantees, and the remaining is minus 1 minus lambda. So this is the spectrum of the complement of a regular graph. See, whatever we are speaking about regular graph can be asked in the case of non-regular graphs. What information we can have regarding the spectrum of non-regular graphs? And I know it very well that within a 1.5 hour we cannot cover much topic on spectral graph theory, and all these are very basic concepts in spectral graph theory. What we have discussed and I tried to describe and I tried to convey are the very basic results in spectral graph theory, and there are many more area of this are there which need attention and further research. There are several graph operations, several classes of graphs, new graphs obtained from old graphs using several combinations, several operations, and eigenvalue bounds. Some strong theory regarding the eigenvalue bounds, such as interlacing theorem, Rayleigh quotient, Perrin-Frobenius theorem for general graphs, and so on. And all these, I beg your pardon that all these concepts cannot be completed in a session of like this. And also, starting from a mid or a core part is not advisable or not beneficial to the audience. That is why I started from the very basic concepts, and I think I explained upon my capacity these things in a rather simple way, I assume. I don't know, as I cannot have any response from you people because we are separated by this virtual platform. I hope that I could be able to make you understand whatever I described here. Now you can, if any questions are there, I think I can try to answer. So anyway, I stop here.
Excuse me, sir.
Okay.
We've opened the chat box so that participants can type any questions they have.
Yes, yes. So I can't see the chat box.
Sir, is the chat box visible now?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. How to find the degrees for any particular chemical compound? Give one example if possible. From graph, I can easily find. See the degree of a vertex is purely a graphical concept. So unless you represent this chemical compound graphically, I don't know. I'm not aware how to find the degree of a particular chemical compound. See, the pictorial representation of a chemical compound can be done in two ways. One, the full pictorial representation of a chemical compound, and for some other part, for some other chemical compounds, we need only a skeleton structure. For example, saturated hydrocarbons, we follow Huckel molecular orbital theory, and we follow the skeleton representation of that, so that the hydrogen atoms are omitted from the organic molecules, such a representation is known as a skeleton representation. And unless that graph is pictorially represented or by means of some software or anything like that, if it is not represented by means of an adjacency matrix, I'm sorry, sir, I don't know. The question is asked by Dr. G. Kumar. I don't know, sir, how to find the degree of a particular chemical compound unless it is represented as a graph or unless it is represented by means of an adjacency matrix. So see, anyway, there is no difference between the adjacency matrix and representation of a graph. Both are the same. One is the pictorial representation and the other is the linear algebraic representation of a graph. Both are same. But I don't know, sir, how to find the degree unless it is represented by a pictorial a picture or an adjacency matrix. We are discussing the same. Dr. G. Kumar, again one question. We are discussing here spectrum for graph, but these are used in chemical graph theory. Kindly give one chemical compound from which, see, there are several chemical compounds, saturated hydrocarbons, trees are the CnH2n+2 type of hydrocarbons. Alkenes. The alkenes are represented by means of trees, and there are plenty of research articles describing the spectrum of trees, especially in some particular cases where the largest valency, largest degree is less than or equal to 4. And that largest degree less than or equal to 4 signifies the valency of the carbon atom. And I think you can find such articles in any repositories. Dr. G. Kumar, is there any spectrum discussed for the incidence matrix? Yes, sir. See, incidence matrix is not a symmetric matrix, that is an m by n matrix. So the spectrum of such an m by n matrix, the incidence matrix is defined as the singular values of A transpose A or A transpose. If A is the so if I is the incidence matrix is the vertex edge incidence matrix. Then the spectrum of the incidence matrix, we cannot find the spectrum because there is not a square matrix, there is an m by n matrix or a p by q matrix. So the spectrum of that m by n matrix in case of graphs are defined as the singular values of I transpose I or I transpose. And there are also papers related to this incident matrix. Initiated this the study on incidence matrix was initiated by Gutman in late 2012, something like that. And there are incident energy, incident matrix, and a similar treatment of adjacency matrix is also extended to incidence matrix. Next question.
So there is one more question.
Can we define spectrum to independence matrix? So I am not getting what is meant by independence matrix. Srija, can you say what you mean by this independence matrix? Srija, can you please tell me what do you mean by this independence matrix? Complement of adjacency matrix, that is the adjacency matrix of the complement of a graph. Is that you mean? Complement of adjacency matrix. I assume that you meant the complement of the adjacency matrix, the complement of the adjacency matrix of the complement of a graph. Srija, KU. If it is so, in my last slide I explained the complement of the adjacency matrix of the complement of a graph. is there any method for finding distance eigenvalues of diameter greater than 3? Actually, that question, I think you mean, I think this question was motivated from the result that the distance eigenvalues of a graph of diameter 2 is closely connected with the adjacency eigenvalues of a graph. I assume that this question was motivated from this information. The distance eigenvalue of a diameter 2 graph can be found from the eigenvalues of the adjacency matrix of a graph, provided the graph is regular. A similar result regarding the distance eigenvalues of a graph having diameter greater than or equal to 3 is not there. But we can find the distance eigenvalues of any graph of diameter k using several other techniques. For example, there are graphs, at least partial answer of this is available. There are graphs with a large diameter. For example, if you consider the Cartesian product of graphs. So for example, if you consider the Cartesian product of a graph of diameter 2 with a graph of diameter 1, you will get a graph of diameter 3. Then you can have a plenty of such graphs, so that we have an infinite family of graphs having diameter 3 and whose eigenvalues can be obtained. And there are results connecting the distance spectrum of the composition of graphs by myself in Ars Mathematica Contemporanea, the distance spectrum of graph compositions. In that paper, we found the distance spectrum of different graph operations. So for example, Cartesian product and lexicographic product. And in Cartesian product, if we apply that, we can have an infinite family of graphs with a diameter 3, 4, 5, etc. any k. Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Is it possible for directed graphs? Yes, yes. See, for the difficulty in case of directed graph is that the directed graph, the adjacency matrix of a directed graph is not symmetric. It is skew symmetric. So all eigenvalues are purely imaginary numbers, and in the light of absence of a rich result regarding the skew symmetric matrices, we find some difficulties, but there are possible ways to find the spectrum of directed graphs, and there are works going on spectrum of digraphs, and that also you can have from repositories. G. Kumar sir, I think that is what you meant. Is it possible for directed graphs?
Sir, we are slightly over time now.
Yes, yes.
So
yes,
we'll have to conclude the session.
Okay.
Dr. Indulal Gopal has given a beautiful talk on basics of spectral graph theory. He started all the way from RN, basics of linear algebra and graph theory, and then worked onwards to spectral graph theory. With the way the material was presented, even a person with only basic knowledge of graph theory and linear algebra could understand the topic. All our participants are saying as such in the chat box. They've left so many messages saying that. So on behalf of the STEP team and all the participants, I would like to thank Dr. Indulal for that great lecture. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
There is one more announcement before we conclude the session. The next talk in this series, Getting Back to Your Roots by Jason I. Brown, will be conducted today from 5:30 to 6:30. All participants are requested to log in before 5:15. Thank you.